Okay, all set, ready to go.
Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Northborough Open Space Committee, Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. This open meeting of Northborough Open Space Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. Signed into law June 16, 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend meeting in public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in an openly public accessible physical location. All members of the Northborough Open Space Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order allows Northborough Open Space Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the town website. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Good evening, open space members. Thanks for taking time to join. Could I get a roll call of who's here by voice, please? Anyone?
Leslie's here.
Brian
Thank you,
Belcher's here.
Leslie. Hey, Brian.
Anthony Zayton.
And Scott Rogers is here.
Anthony. Scott, thank you. And John Campbell is here. We have 5 members. Is that it?
Nice to sort of meet you, Scott.
Good to see you, Leslie.
Welcome, Scott. Am I missing anybody? That's it. Okay. We have an agenda. I'm going to recommend a switch of items. I'd like to discuss 655 Howard Street first, in the interest that it may be the more briefer of the subjects. And so it's my understanding that we have another Bennett, yes, that has come forward interested in offering their land to the town for sale at 665 Howard. This borders 615 Howard, which was approved by this committee to buy, approved by Conservation Committee, and the town now owns and is under conservation restriction approved by the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting. So this land would border it, expand the conservation area by backing up to Mount Pisgah area that we have existing. It seems interesting and attractive on those bases and fills many of our criteria for what we would consider attractive open space. Any input by board members, whether you like it or not?
Like anything that's adjacent to Pisgah or more that area is definitely an attractive thing.
I
Can you
would
see the
agree,
map?
and Mia's doing exactly what I was about to ask about, was to see how it fits in on the map.
And you said 655?
665.
665. Okay.
So it has frontage on Howard, so it goes all the way up to Howard?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That helps our frontage on Howard, so seems like a good thing in terms of access.
They would just sell us the backland.
Oh, okay, all right.
If I put topography on, it's going to get a little busy, but you can see there's a field here. And they would like their line to be at the rear of the field. So a little less acreage than 615. Their house is down low. Instead of it coming up, it's down low by the street. And then they have this field they'd like to keep. And these are just preliminary discussions. It's Bruce and Marilyn McAllister. And Marilyn is the sister of Keith Bennett, Keith and Elizabeth sold us this one.
Look at
So
those
it's-
topo lines.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's basically,
Wow.
is it a cliff or what?
It sure is, yeah. It's hard to get up.
I'm not, I've not ever walked that area, but is there pros and cons to what they're proposing as far as whether we could get a compromise on more land and whether it offers larger recreation area, trail extension and so on from you guys that are familiar with it?
It already
I'm not-
has. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I've spent a lot of time at Pisgah, but I'm not familiar with that section. Like I said, it's a cliff, so
There are some.
Overlook? Is that the overlook or what's?
It's south of the overlook, and there are some traversing trails along that cliffside. I'm not sure if they are on that property, but just because it's a cliff doesn't mean it is like zero access. There's a bunch of spots back there where there are traversing trails. I'm trying to find a Strava heat map, see if I can figure out what's there.
Is there a yellow trail traversing it, Mia? Is that a trail easement now?
Yeah.
or-
Yep, this is the south overlook down here. And then Tyler is a really common trail. It's parallel to the Berlin Road Trail. And from our initial maps, the Tyler Trail is already on their property.
Oh, interesting.
No.
This is an unnamed
I thought-
trail.
That's what I meant. The one coming from the north that kind of crosses
Mhm.
across the steep and down to almost into the field, I guess. That's what I meant.
Is that a trail that was originated by the owners or? We don't know.
It's an old dairy farm. So these trails were all used for moving the cattle. This is what Keith told me.
Okay.
He has a trail that goes from Tyler into his property here that Northborough Trails Committee actually had blazed with red blazes, even though it's not on this map. It comes right into his backyard. And then I asked him about this trail and he said, oh yeah, it's there. People use it.
Yeah, so I am familiar with those trails now that so yeah, it does kind of go down. It's a beautiful spot.
Do you know how many acres did you say? I'm sorry.
So each of these are all, so the Bennett farm was here across the street.
Yeah.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4 siblings were each given 23.52 acres exactly. So we got 19, we bought 19 and they
Right.
kept 4.5 at the front here at 615 Howard. So it's going to be hard to tell, let's see, measure, if we do the line about here,
Right.
how many acres? That's 15 acres.
Well, you're a power user.
So we'll still get, and the price will be per acre. We'd have to, the next step, if you wanted to move forward, would be, we would ask, you would move forward with an appraisal. We would ask the McAllisters to put forth an A&R plan. They'd have to get a survey and they'd have to draw that line where they want to break off that parcel, get it approved to break off, and then we would start soliciting appraisals.
What is the, do we have, how do the appraisals get paid for?
Out of the Open Space Administrative Fund.
Okay.
It's paid for by CPC funds.
And it's somewhere usually less than $5,000 normally.
Lately, they've been 3 to 4,
Okay.
depending on the size and the complexity. 432s was pretty complex, and it was
Yeah.
4,000.
And Mia, just for future, looking at this whole area, we anticipate that the sibling to the north of this will contact us at some point. Correct?
Yes, Keith told all his siblings,
Yeah.
and they, the McAllister said we should have done it a year ago. Keith has good things to say about it, and one of these, either the top one or the bottom one, is sold to someone else. It's not a sibling anymore, but they know them. They're family friends or something. So they're talking about it, which was the goal. We said to Keith, tell your neighbors, tell your friends.
I move that we get an appraisal.
In a second. In terms of moving forward, definitely.
I heard a motion by Leslie and a second by Scott, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So our motion,
John, you've got a terrible connection.
Yeah, I got a lot of lag.
Now you're actually frozen.
Give him a minute. Last time he had to join on another device. I'll stop sharing.
I'm back. Can you hear me? See me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hear you.
Love me?
Oh,
See?
now you're frozen again.
All right, sorry about that. It's about, yeah.
So far, so good.
How am I looking?
Pretty
Coming
good.
through? Okay.
Marvelous.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, let's move quickly. So we're voting to agree to approve an appraisal, which does what, Mia? We bring that to conservation to approve it, or?
Yep, you
you know,
recommend that we get an appraisal on the property. I contact the McAllisters and ask them to do the survey and A&R, start soliciting appraisals. Once I get those prices, I'll take the prices right to the Conservation Commission for approval of, I'll just use the same contractors we've been using, and I'll take that cost just to get them to, they have to vote to spend the money from the Conservation Fund.
Very good. Any other questions then about what we're voting on? Hearing none, I'm going to take a roll call vote, starting with Leslie.
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
and John, aye. Very good. Let's move forward. And just a question for details, Mia. They've defined the acreage exactly that we're going to get appraised?
Yes, it's their property, so they decide where they want that lot line to be.
Very well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on, our next major item is 432 Whitney Street, review of the appraisal and discussion about this land and our recommendation to the conservation and by extension to the town with regard to the opportunity for the town to exercise its right of first refusal to buy this land. Mia or Kathy, would you mind describing the appraisal?
Sure, Mia has been working on this.
Sure. So in summary, it was an appraisal of 23.77 acres of industrial land at 432 Whitney Street, and it came in at $1,600,000. There is a signed purchase and sale for the property for $1.5 million, and the appraiser says the slightly higher value is due to the fact that the $1.5 million is part of a package deal. It's part of the purchase of 432 and the property across the street, 429. So he says if you were to break it out of that package deal, then it would become 1.6. And it's a pretty in-depth, I sent everybody a copy. It's like 36 pages or something. It was very thorough. I had no questions. I've also heard from the Mr. Anza's lawyer, who said that he and Mr. Anza agree with the valuation. They thought it was fair.
What is the plan for the purchasers?
So Lincoln Properties has a signed purchase and sale to purchase both 432 and 429 Whitney Street. And the next step for this, the sale is to notify the town of the purchase because both properties are in the Chapter 61 agricultural program. So to withdraw from that program, they have to notify the town by letter in writing, goes to the town administrator's office, various boards, committees. We just went through this process with 121 Ball Street. It'll mirror that process. And then the Board of Selectmen will take recommendations from each board and committee, and they'll make the final determination as to whether they want to exercise that right of first refusal. So you have two paths. You could pursue the purchase and, through your own path as if they weren't going through the right of first refusal. But I think Kathy and I are both recommending that you wait because that right of first refusal is coming very soon. And your appraisal isn't wasted money. It is so valuable. And I'm so happy that you did it because it's going to become really valuable to the town boards and committees during that right of first refusal process.
Do you know what Lincoln Properties or whatever, what they're planning to do with them?
They've met with staff already they met with department heads to see what permits they would need. And they're proposing 100,000 plus square foot warehouses on each property.
Does that purchaser also run any property on that street now?
Do they
Does
own
anybody know?
anything on Whitney Street?
Yes, in that same area.
Kathy, they don't, right? They manage stuff in Northborough.
Right. They don't own anything in this sort of northwest-ish. Well, I don't know, not really northwest-ish, but in the northern part of town. They're on Bartlett Street. And they recently actually, they owned the site that's now Amazon, where the Amazon warehouse is. So that was one of their properties, but they own property all over. I think it was all over the country, they said, Mia, right? It's not just
international.
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
millions of square feet. I tried to write the number down, but I didn't believe the number. Yeah.
So they're in their, as Mia had said, they're in their due diligence, phase. They've obviously, come up with a purchase and sale for each parcel. But as Mia said, that we haven't been notified yet of the town. So that 120 day, that magic window that a town has to react within or respond within, that hasn't started yet. We anticipate, any day now, I mean, between Mia in particular, but we're getting calls, from Lincoln Properties, from their attorney, from their engineer, from the broker, the broker and Santo Anza's attorney are constantly calling Mia, a little bit relentless, and really the ball's in their court. They need to put this purchase and sale, the right of first refusal process in motion. But it's not surprising what they're proposing, or at least what they're telling us that they're proposing, which is, perfectly legitimate when you look at the parcels. They're both long and narrow. 432 is a relatively, virgin site. Of course, we all know, the background with 429, and I guess they're in the process of, reviewing whether or not it's feasible, whether they, cap the product that, the fill, so to speak, that was brought in, or do they remove it, or do they not even bother with that portion of the property, but, come closer to Whitney Street. So they themselves may have made those decisions yet, but we really don't think that they have. And they didn't have any, real site plans to share with us yet. But, I certainly anticipate that we'll be meeting, with the group again. We call them development review meetings, but, they're in-house meetings. So we anticipate that happening again.
Is there any remediation that needs to be happen on 429? And if so, does Anza take care of that, or does the new?
We have no idea at this point. That's really a private matter, given that he has a prospective, buyer of the property. But, they've spent hours going through Mia's files to look at all the wetlands issues and the violations that had occurred and so there's, there's quite a bit of investigation that they need to do. And I think they were going to be meeting with DEP, or they're going to be in touch with DEP. And that's really, who's going to be the deciding factor for them about what they can do with that, whether they have to remove it or cap it or not even touch it, and not even build near it. But because there's other land that's closer to the street that, was not, there's wetlands though, correct, Mia? There's a lot of wetlands there.
There's wetlands in the back too, though.
Yeah.
They're doing borings this week or next week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And DEP had, DEP is managing the site under solid waste, their solid waste department and wetlands. And so they had shared long time ago maps with us of areas of fill. There's a fill map that we have that was DEP was working with them. So I think that's what they're going to do the borings on. So the proposed buyer is doing their due diligence. They're researching. And I specifically asked them during that meeting, have you been given permission already to do the borings? And their engineer said, yes, we have it in writing. We're doing the borings.
So would this require a special town meeting?
To purchase it, Anthony, or to purchase both pieces? Well,
To buy anything? Well, yeah, I don't know if, go ahead.
I was just going to say that. So let's just focus on 432 for right now, because that's where the appraisal was done. So so the purchase price, as Mia said, though, it's kind of packaged. So the purchase price we understand that will be coming, to the town is 1.5, but I don't know what it is for across the street. Do you know, Mia? For 429?
I have it in here.
I was looking through this earlier, Mia, and I couldn't find it in here, but I mean, I found the info for 432, but either way, the one of two things I see it, Anthony, is one of two things. Either if the town, votes to exercise their right of first refusal, once you make the decision within the 120 days, there is then, I believe it's another 90 days that the town has to purchase the property. So what's unclear, and which of course we would, get verified, but what's unclear, at least to me, is whether a town meeting has to be held within that 90 days or we have action to show that we are moving forward. And so we'll, within those 90 days, we would schedule a special town meeting perhaps. Because it all depends on how this flushes out as to whether or not, it would line up with the spring town meeting and, with the CPA application. Because I mean, most likely I would think, if the open space committee thought this was a good idea, if ultimately the Board of Selectmen thought that this was a good idea, then most likely you would do a CPA application, and then go to town meeting for that. And, and it would have to be, we would have to do a bond for this because there isn't this amount of money, in the reserves.
Kathy, 429 was in the purchase and sale. They're offering 1.8 million for 429
okay.
and 1.5 million for 432.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mia. So does that answer that, Anthony? That it's, I mean, because the amount of money, it will have to go to a town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or whether it could eventually line up with the spring town meeting. We don't know that at this point because we don't know when we're going to be getting the purchase and sale from the owner.
I don't know how anybody else feels, but I think I would like to pursue this.
A question for Kathy or Mia from me. Just theoretically, if the sale goes through, it was chapter land. Could the buyer, in theory, apply to be chapter land again, even though we think they're industrial building developers? And second part of that question, could the buyer potentially not develop the land but rent it to someone for operations, like the same guy? Is that a risk or an option?
I cannot imagine that Lincoln Properties would do anything other than develop this property. That's what they do. They develop and manage properties.
Did you say
So-
that they own the Amazon buildings and manage, or?
No, they don't
they
now.
sold them? Okay,
They did,
No.
and they sold them.
Right.
The purchase and sales, both of them are very specific that they're purchasing them for the development of a warehouse. And there's even wording in there about, that this is the price and for, say, I want to say it's like 100,000 square feet. And then the value of the property will actually go up for all the additional square footage they get. So they are trying to get, it's very specific for a warehouse. It talks about permitting, amounts for permitting.
I'd like to review our criteria for selecting pieces for purchase.
Well, just before we get to that, there was a question about the Chapter 61 program. If Anza were to sell to someone else who wanted to stay within the Chapter 61 program, it would not come to the town for a right of first refusal. It would stay within the program and the new buyer. So that is a possibility. But these buyers, their purchase and sale is based on the fact that they're going to be withdrawing from the Chapter 61 program and building warehouses. And then as far as renting, he could technically rent, Mr. Anza could rent the property to someone else. As far as the use, that would have to be going through the zoning enforcement officer and building inspector.
If they withdraw, are there any back taxes or anything that has to be paid?
Oh, I don't know about
Yeah,
back taxes.
There's, it's not so much back taxes, but there's an assessment that's made depending on how long the property's been in 61A. As they're called rollback taxes. But that all is based on how long the property's been in the program, and then how the assessor figures out, what if anything is due to the town.
Kathy, have both properties been in the program the same amount of time?
That I don't know. I don't know if he put 429 in first, but they're probably right around the same time, Scott. I mean, we can find that out from the assessor's office, and just shoot everybody an email if you want, but the assessors would know when they enrolled.
I wanted to follow on my question and ask it this way. If the buyer were to buy this property and for whatever reason delays development of 429, and I think Mia just said there'd be nothing to prevent them from renting it for another use. Specifically, is there a chance Anza continues to operate, paying rent to the new owner, even if Chapter 61 is out of it, the new owner doesn't care? But is that a possibility in terms of what could happen after they buy it?
I think they'd have to alter the current, so the current purchase and sale is contingent upon a warehouse being permitted and built.
Aha, okay.
But, they're only willing to pay, I mean, just like any real estate transaction, they're only willing to pay, X amount of dollars if they're, if they go through the permitting process and get X amount of square feet. Again, Lincoln Properties is not, there would be no reason for them to buy land and sit on it. It's just not what they do.
I understand. So on that basis, just again, a little naive walking through the process. If they were to continue along the purchase and sale process, you just said, which I wasn't clear about, it's continuing on them getting approval to build. So that process gets stretched out by whatever time it takes to get approval from town boards, right? Could be weeks, months.
Yes.
And the purchase and sale remains open, so to speak.
Well, not as far as the town's involvement. You know, the town has that 120 days to make a decision whether or not they want to purchase the property. And once if the town makes the decision, no, we're not going to purchase the property. I can't imagine why anyone would want to purchase 429 Whitney Street. There's no value, in my opinion, there's no value to the town for 429, and I question the value of 432 also, but there's just no once the town acts on their right of first refusal and say the town passes on it, then it goes on as any other private transaction.
Yep. Okay, I understand.
To follow up on that, then if then the purchase and sale for Lincoln Properties then did not go through, and then another potential buyer came about, would the town still have the ability, right of first refusal on that
Yes.
purchase and sale?
Yeah, it starts all over again, right, Mia?
Yeah, as long as ANZA, it's
Yeah.
an annual application. So
Yeah.
as long as ANZA reapplies and remains within the Chapter 61 program. And then the prospective buyer has a use that not in the chapter, he would have to withdraw from the program again, and the town would then get right of first refusal.
Okay, so it's triggered by that continued subscription.
Right, as long as he stays in the program, and then anytime there's a valid purchase and sale, it's that's a new sort of crack at it every time, if something like that were to continue.
So just to bring us back to the point of our meeting on this, our role is to make a recommendation for whether or not we feel the town should exercise its right to pursue purchasing the property. It's not our final decision, but that's really what we're discussing and ultimately voting on. And so I think we'll go back to Leslie, who was hitting on or starting to hit on our criteria, which overlaps into the Community Preservation Committee, but basically the open space criteria that we developed jointly, and sort of how we govern our decisions on whether, our deliberations, I should say, on whether a property meets key criteria and makes it a priority. Would you like to elaborate on that, Leslie, please?
I actually don't have a great command of all the criteria. I mean, I know one is, being contiguous to other wildlife corridors, I know is another one, but I honestly don't remember what they all are in order to guide the conversation in a really intelligent way, but at least starting with those two, I guess. You can start with those two.
I thought you were all loaded up. You let me down here.
I could use a refresher on the criteria.
Thanks, John.
I mean, you offered a presentation. I was ready for you to. Okay.
Two of them, I think.
Well, anyway, yeah, you're mentioning the major one, which is obviously those parcels that abut existing town-owned, state-owned, or conserved land, which is why. If you can still hear me, I was freezing there a minute. Green Street land, Silver Properties, this Bennett property, the other pieces along Howard Street that border the Mount Pisgah region have all been relative layups in terms of our meeting those criteria. The secondary is do the properties offer an opportunity for passive or active recreation that enhances the town's resources, Does it meet a critical need? An example might be, we really need another soccer field or something, and this fits it, you know. That wouldn't be the case here. You know, and backing up to the beginning, would it fit approval under the CPA, which it would if it was kept as open space or passive recreation or active recreation, and it had an applicable conservation restriction to prevent it from development. And then finally, does purchase of this land reduce development that would be adverse to the town? Are we trying to, you know, prevent a large new living area? Are we trying to bench a large development that would tax the town's resources, you know, overpopulate the town's schools, things like that? Does it have a large adverse effect to the town if it was not conserved? I think I'll summarize it that way.
Does the wildlife corridor get factored into there also?
Yes, I think
okay.
Yeah, more in the beginning of what you brought up in the beginning as well. Yes, does it feed active wildlife corridors? You know, enhance wildlife habitats. So those, I believe, and I'm not reading it either, but I think I've touched on the major points that we typically go through. If it spurred anyone from remembering anything else, please chime in. So having listed those criteria, we could briefly review how this piece fits. It does not border any existing conservation areas. It does not border any existing recreation areas. I don't think it represents an opportunity for a new active recreation space such as fields. This is, now I'm stating some opinions, but I don't see that it offers, let me back up. It may offer some passive recreation opportunities if you were to create trails, although it's not feeding anything existing. The parcel we're talking about, 432, is bordered by Whitney Street on the one side. I believe the backland of it does feed into other wetlands. And we're only able to talk about 432 in this context right now. Any other comments relative to how it fits criteria?
I don't know if Mia could speak to the wildlife component. I don't think.
There's no priority or estimated habitat that's protected. It is pretty contiguous wildlife corridor behind the industrial on Forbes Road over into Berlin in the Barefoot Brook flood control site.
Do we know, I mean, are they far along in the process where they've established like how much of the land they would actually develop, or would they be forced into leaving some kind of green space corridor on the southern edge?
You can see the wetlands here in the front, and then they have to stay 25-foot no touch, 35-foot no structure here. So you can see the parcel is kind of shaped like a pork chop. So it's all wet along the east and along the south. But it is what, 24 acres?
I don't think they're far enough along, Brian, with the plans that they did show us. I mean, they were very, very, very conceptual, like literally, you know, a rectangle, and you know, a potential parking field. But so they, you know, and again, I don't mean to keep harping on 429, but you know, they don't even know where they, you know, might put the building there. So, I mean, I think there's always potential with, whether it's the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, particularly if a developer needs, something out of the ordinary, if it's not something that's as of right. So if they, require special permits, I think that there's always room for negotiation to talk about, whether it's something as large as field space or trail easements or actual land that they would donate or to the town for that purpose.
Yeah, because John, like following along with the list, it doesn't, as awesome as it would be to try to conserve this, it doesn't seem like it's checking any of the boxes, unless I'm misinterpreting.
I agree, Brian.
Right. I think like the general sense is that it's a supremely nice piece of green space, but it doesn't appear to match our criteria.
And the price is high.
Price is really high.
Yeah. John, you're on mute.
Forgive me, I don't know how that happened. I was going to say I tend to agree with what you said, Brian and Leslie. And the other factor is affordability. This is very expensive, and we have to look at what's the likelihood this might get approved by CPA committee as a project, and then finally by the town. I know that the property taken as the two is controversial in many ways, but it would be tough to meet the criteria of CPA for priority, even though it's time sensitive because of this potential sale. The CPA, we've got a lot. We have a bunch of burden with White Cliffs. We're looking at a parcel that we discussed earlier that seems to be a good candidate and can use conservation funds that we did get approved at this year's town meeting. But I feel like it might be tough going to both the CPA and the town to ask for a bond on this property that doesn't have a clear purpose other than preventing the development of the warehouse.
What's hard with and this is not unique to Northborough. This is just how this program is set up. What's hard with chapter land, if a town is interested in purchasing the property, it's almost like the community has waited too long, and now it's gone to the point where someone is actively interested in developing the property. So that's what drives the cost of it. 10 years ago, and it's not to say that you don't want to look at these opportunities, but just the nature of the program itself, it's like it protects land temporarily and helps out the homeowner or the landowner so that they're not paying full value, but yet they are, doing, agriculture or forestry or, something where they're producing that income, the very minimum to meet the program. But by the time, we as a community or as a town gets that purchase and sale, it's really an elevated price because it's going to be developed, in millions and millions of dollars of private investment is going to be put into the property. So it's
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We've been most successful when we've gotten ahead of it. Green Street comes to mind and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Can anyone speculate what Ashley would mention about this? I mean, I know she's not here, but she tends to have really interesting input on land.
I
didn't get
can't
to talk to
speculate.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that they'd been able to attend. I think we're at a point where this segment of the board, the five of us, have got to move the question
May I mention one other thing?
Yes,
And we've discussed this before, and this is my heart speaking, not my head necessarily. But given that it doesn't check all the other boxes anyway, the sort of a deal breaker, I guess a final straw for me is the history of this property, the history of this landowner, and the abuse that has occurred towards the town, and the idea of the town forking over all this money just doesn't sit right with me. Again, if it ticked all the other boxes, then I could kind of put the heart part aside. But for me, if there's anything that's on the fence, to me, that just kind of seals the deal for me, that I would have a really hard time stomaching.
But I think sort of as a counterpoint, like if cost weren't an object, right? In an ideal magical world, the developer would buy the disgusting 429 property and clean that up and put a warehouse there, and then SA is gonzo, and then somehow the southern section at 432, would get conserved in some fashion, right? I know that's not necessarily feasible, but I would think that like in the public opinion, I feel like people would feel good about that, the dollar figure notwithstanding, right? I think that people would understand, like, if they want to get SA out of the picture, there's going to be money involved. But if only half of it is coming from the town, so to speak, then it's less unappealing. Anyway, just opinions.
well, I think I'd like
I
to.
mean, that's a good point, but we don't have that choice, right? Because Lincoln is going after both.
Well, is it a
Right.
make or break, right? Would they back out of the purchase of the 429 if they couldn't also acquire 432?
That we
And
can't know.
Kathy, can you confirm, like, when we get the right of first refusal, we get to review each parcel independently? We don't have to do 2 or 0.
Correct, right.
We can just move forward on one of them.
Yeah.
Or both, or none.
But we have, we've talked about this in-house, we have again, we're not privy to, those discussions that have gone on between the property owner and Lincoln, or anyone else that might have looked at the property beforehand. We don't know if those two are tied. If you have to, if who's ever looking at it for private development, if they have to purchase both pieces, we don't know what that deal may or may not be.
The purchase and sales are contingent on both. So if the town were to exercise on one, those purchase and sales would have to be renegotiated. So I don't know we don't know if Lincoln would continue on the other one or completely withdraw. But they were 2 independent projects. They came with 2 projects, and we told them they're 2 projects with 2 sets of permits.
John's very quiet or frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
We'll give him a minute.
I thought he was being pensive, but yeah, I think he's.
I mean, while we wait for John, I could begin to construct arguments around preserving, extending that wetland behind, and that habitat. Maybe there's an opportunity for some passive recreation, and obviously we could make the case about avoiding some adverse effects of a development that's not going to be popular in the area.
Oh.
But I think
I'm sorry, if John dropped out, do we have to pause the meeting, Kathy, since we only have 4? Oh, never mind.
Thank you, Mia.
Here he is. Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm glad you kept us straight on that.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So John, as you were interrupted, I was just saying I could begin to construct some arguments about some of the criteria in terms of preserving some of the habitat area and some passive recreation and avoiding some adverse effects. But I don't think those arguments are going to be strong enough when we, as you mentioned, get it positioned relative to other CBA projects and a dollar amount placed on it. So my feeling at the moment is that it would be nice to consider this, but I don't think we've got enough of a justification.
Understood. I tend to concur. Well, I would like to recommend we move the question of our recommendation, because that's really our role. What do we recommend to the town? And I guess I'd welcome a motion that either is crafted toward a yes or a no that we can vote on.
So before you make the motion, there's two paths. You can be independent of the right of first refusal process and just say, that you've commissioned this appraisal and you have, as a committee, has decided not to move forward on the purchase. And if you want, you can, what I'm hearing so far is that it doesn't hit enough criteria for the large purchase price to move forward with the purchase. The other thing is, Kathy, maybe you can comment, is if they want to draft that memo because the right of first refusal is coming, they could go ahead and discuss that, create that. I could draft the memo for John to sign off on, and then you wouldn't have to meet again for that process. If more new information comes in, of course, you can meet again.
Right, yeah, and I mean, I suppose you could take the vote about the right of first refusal for 429 and 432, but your agenda item tonight is, it's 432. So yeah, I completely agree with Mia. You can do it either way. You can either just say, based on this appraisal and our criteria, we're gonna, we're passing on this project. And then you could come back once we get the official, everyone has to weigh in on it. You could vote again, but
Yes.
you can take care of it all tonight, I think.
Well, I think we need to stick to the agenda, because, as you say, you've not gotten notice officially, and so probably we should stick to our comments being on 432 relative to the appraisal and whether we want to pursue that property. It's probably the correct thing to do. It does leave us the opportunity to meet again should we feel a need to discuss if the official notice comes in. I'm guessing it's the right thing to do right now.
That sounds the safest.
That gives you flexibility if new information comes in.
Yeah, that's true too.
I agree.
We find some
So-
blue spotted salamanders.
So really then our question is whether to pursue the purchase of 432 Whitney as an open space priority.
So, Mr. Chair, I move we vote to not pursue 432 for purchase, 432 Whitney for purchase.
Thank you, Scott. So the motion is not to pursue, seconded by Leslie. Any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote on the motion, which is to not pursue purchase of 432 Whitney. Leslie,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
John, I as well.
It's unanimous.
I think it was a really good discussion, folks. I appreciate it. And appreciate Kathy and Mia's input. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was good to see you all again.
We had a previously scheduled August date, did we not? Mia, can you remind me, please?
It was August 30th. Is that right? It was quite far out.
I think you might be right.
Next meeting at your June meeting, you had said your next meeting was going to be August 30th. Do you want to keep that date?
I would personally recommend we keep the date. Again, we'll leave ourselves flexible if there's a need to meet sooner. Would it be okay to defer the May minutes until then? We'll have more of the board.
Yeah, they're not ready yet.
Okay, good.
And
Answered.
do you want to have a discussion about whether you want it remote or in person? You want to just wait because it's another month away.
I personally would like to do it in person if everyone's comfortable with it.
I can
And
do
then
it
I
in person.
won't, yeah.
Yep.
I'll be less likely to freeze
comfortable
in
with
person.
That's true. We'll see. I mean, I enjoy the convenience of remote. I'm gonna do so, but yeah, I'll go.
Drive down the
Well,
street.
A big 10-minute drive. I can handle it.
We'll revisit as we get closer, but let's go with that.
So once we go to in person, will they still be live streamed, or what's going to happen in terms of, because there are, besides the convenience to us, there are the access and equity issues that have to be considered. I'm curious what.
At this time, we don't
What
have the
happened?
technology to do hybrid meetings or even live stream meetings.
Yeah.
Even the planning board was struggling to find someone to
Do
take
we
their
have
meeting.
do we have a sense for what kind of impact it'll have if we do go to in person, specifically for open space?
It'll just go back to the way it was before. Trails Committee met in person. It wasn't taped. Conservation is classically audio taped. That's just for minutes taking purposes.
So
Quality
you
isn't
say we
very good.
don't have the technology. I mean, haven't the schools been doing hybrid meetings for like a year and a half now?
I don't know. Kathy, do you know?
I don't know. The governor, I mean, under the state of the emergency, we couldn't do hybrid. Now I believe we can, but that's only been like a month or so, Brian. So I honestly, I don't know what the school is doing, but we,
Well, they were doing hybrid. I mean, I watched my kids sit in on live classes. So
Oh, classroom meetings.
yeah, so I'm just saying that the blanket statement of we don't have the technology, I'm not saying we need to rush right out and do it, but I think it's possible we might actually have technology resources that we're maybe not aware of that could possibly let us do hybrid meetings. I'm not sure who to talk to about that, but the tech is there. I don't know who owns it, but it exists.
yeah, there's a group that
I hate to say it.
subcommittee, at the town hall that's looking at it, keeping in touch with, the Mass Municipal Association, as far as, how do we go about developing, a hybrid, what's that look like? How many members have to be, I think right now the governor said that it's all or one, either all the members have to be present in the room or all the members have to be, remote or virtual.
Fair enough. It wasn't actually relevant to the governor's rules. I mean, I think the goal would be that the committee members are still live, but that there would be a component where it is broadcast or YouTubed for
Yeah,
more public visibility. That's all.
yeah.
Right. I'm
It's-
just saying
there-
it might be worth, regardless of what the governor decries, it's probably worth someone just taking a look at, like, is there some public benefit to letting people see these meetings streamed in a fashion?
Yeah.
I think there is. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
viable.
Oh,
but
I think pretty much everyone would agree with that. Absolutely. But it's
Hey, let's go back to the way it was, because
it's for people other than me and I to make those decisions.
Yeah.
okay, I just wanted to raise it. I'd hate to say let's just go back to the way it was, because that's the way it was. I think the pandemic has brought certain things, certainly been devastating in ways, but it has also been beneficial in others, and I'd like to see the beneficial parts continue. I
Who
think
should they
there's a lot of-
contact, Kathy?
Well, I think we can just bring these comments forward, Mia, to like, the assistant town administrator and the IT director. So,
Yeah, that would be great, Kathy, because we've,
Yeah.
we've touched on it in other boards and committees,
yeah,
benefit and definitely the public appreciates the ability to see these streamed or, and the ability to have them recorded, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know we've touched it on another one. So I guess if the open space, lent our weight as well,
yeah,
saying the benefit that it can only help push things forward.
Yep, no, we'll definitely, bring your comments forward. Absolutely.
I mean, in light of that,
Thank
does
you.
that change what we want to do for August 30th, or is it be nice to see everybody on the 30th in person?
In the end, John, you're muted.
I'm just not really doing a good job tonight. I'm sorry. Why don't we plan?
You're
for
making your
in-person-
case for in person.
Yeah, exactly. I got a lousy connection for some reason. I'm out of town, but let's plan for in person. Let's revisit it. There is still some dynamics going on in the world. So, and we have 4 or 5 other members to consider. So we'll throw it out there, maybe Mia, and if you get the majority feedback to go Zoom again, no problem.
I'd like to hear
And
from
that is another
Anthony.
consideration. I mean, I've been doing this for work for a year. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
My preference is remote. It's just a lot more convenient, but
Okay.
I'll go along with what the team wants here.
And of course, if any of the other members have, any reasons that, they aren't comfortable in a group meeting, then obviously that trumps any preference I have. So I can go either way, but if someone is concerned about a larger group, then definitely we'll bend to that.
Maybe Mia, closer to the date, when we get an agenda, we'll call out for who can attend and offer. Is it easier for people to do it remotely?
Okay.
And we'll go with the majority of respondents, which we don't have to vote on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Take into consideration case counts. I mean, case counts are on the rise, not tremendously, but with the Delta variant, that things could really change in the next 6 weeks. So think
Yeah,
it's
I
worth-
agree.
We're seeing a lot of breakthrough infections at work, a lot.
Yeah, I agree with the dynamics. Any other business, people? Hearing none, could someone offer a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
No second.
Very good. Roll call to adjourn. Leslie,
Yes.
Brian,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
John, aye. Thanks again for making time tonight, people.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Thanks,
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Mia.
Thank you.
Bye.